You're listening to Wellness Talk Radio. I'm Chris Costello. Today we're talking with Judy Converse, who is a licensed registered dietitian and also has a practice in Colorado treating children. She has written a book called Special Needs Kids Eat Right. Judy, great to have you here with us today.
Oh, thank you.
So you became interested in this on a very personal level. You had a child that had some special needs?
Well, yes. When my son was born, he had pretty big issues with feeding, growing, eliminating, and, there's nothing more fundamental to how an infant functions than whether or not they can absorb a diet, and that he obviously had a lot of problems with that, and I was a dietitian at the time, and I was very surprised to see that my providers didn't have any guidance for me at all. And that really shocked me. And my son clearly needed some intervening in terms of nutrition care, and I couldn't get anybody on board. I couldn't get any guidance for that.
So you basically had an infant that was miserable and crying and not growing, and you went to your pediatrician, and you didn't find any help there.
Right, and I have to say it was a lot more serious than colic. He had a pretty serious. There were some neurological features that were very concerning. He had been hospitalized. He had syncope and cyanosis, meaning he passed out. This was not your garden variety colic. This was very serious. There was projectile vomiting. There was a lot of mucus in his stool. A lot was going on, and there were some questions about whether there were seizures, and we just could not get our providers' attention to really take any of that seriously. And I remember thinking, what do you have to do to a baby to get the doctor to pay attention? And we didn't live in a remote area by any means. We lived in the Northeast and had major medical centers at our access to all that. So that was quite an eye-opener for me. And I could see that just because of my training, which had really drilled me on how critical nutrition is in the first 3 years of life, I could see that this was a child that was not absorbing his diet normally. Something was wrong. And if I did not find a way to fix that, it could impact him developmentally. And the data on that is ancient. I mean, it's old. This is not new or novel. It's established. So that's the part that really surprised me, that his pediatricians were not really aware of that data or how to apply it in practice.
Right, and not to mention just the day-to-day living through having a child with those kind of challenges. I mean, that would be really, really tough. And
right.
And so you were kind of hitting brick walls, it sounds like. So what did you do? I mean, you have this nutrition background. How did you start finding out these answers?
This was in 1996, so there really wasn't an internet then, so to speak, and if there wasn't much up there. So I did what people did in the olden days. I actually went to a library and started cracking texts and journals and looking for information about very young infants who show signs of inflammation from foods or who can't absorb or tolerate their diet. I mean, my son was being breastfed. My training was that there is no such thing as a baby that doesn't tolerate breast milk. And if he or she does not, then what? There just were not tools around that anyone was introducing me to. So after a lot of trial and error, I actually created a formula for him. And this is, of course, after we tried commercial formulas, which were very unsuccessful for him. And I asked the pediatrician, what did you guys used to do before you had commercial formulas in great arrays to choose from? I mean, you don't just let these babies die. And he had nothing to say other than, these are just inconsequential comfort issues for your son, and too bad. And I actually hung up on the guy and never called him back. I never called him back. I just thought, okay, I'm done. And that's what prompted me to research even more, and I put together a formula that was based on goat milk. he absorbed that very nicely. And I've actually used that formula in practice a lot since then. There are kids who also do not tolerate that, and then it takes even more, finagling to find the right food. But that kind of thing takes a lot of professional guidance. I wouldn't encourage a parent to go on that journey without some guidance. I was lucky enough to have my background to guide me.
Right. And we're talking with Judy Converse. And if you want to find out more about her work, you can go to www.nutritioncare.net, or you can give her a call at 303-842-8255. So, Judy, how's your son now?
Oh, wow. He's 12. I'm 5'7.5". He's about to surpass me in height. He's doing great. He's just finishing up 6th grade, and I can't believe every night he grows a lot, it seems. He wakes up a new size. He's doing really well.
Wonderful. So your research paid off, it sounds like.
Oh, yeah. It made a huge difference in his life when he was little. Yeah.
Now, one of the things I want to ask you about, because this is very interesting for me, I also have a son with special needs, and what I am finding with the radio show is that I speak to many different experts. I've spoken to people that are dealing with dyslexia, people with, brain fog issues and nutrition type issues, just the whole range of different subjects. But what I have found, and it's very interesting, is that there are so many different answers. Recently, I had an ADD fellow not rule out that nutrition caused ADD and things like that, but certainly not committing to knowing anything about these issues. And I run into that a lot. I've had a dyslexia person that has said, nutrition makes no difference in dyslexia. So I know that you can speak to that. So I'd really like to hear what you have to say.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think there's a couple things come to mind right away. I don't think nutrition causes any of these things. I think that here's the thing. I'm sure the people you spoke with are not nutritionists, and they probably don't have degrees in this field. So, of course, they wouldn't be the go-to people to ask those questions. And likewise, I'm not a psychologist, and I don't diagnose children for learning or developmental disabilities, and I don't presume to know anything about psychiatric medications that a psych MD would prescribe. That's not my gig either. So I think that's one part of the story, is when there's discussion out there about these issues, you're asking the wrong people. If you're asking, how does nutrition impact this situation, you need to speak to somebody from that field, not a psychologist, not a teacher, because this is not their field. So the second part of that is, the reality is, as I said before, nutrition is a science and practice in itself. You have to be licensed in most states to be practicing it. I mean, it's a valid science. It's not fringy. It's not alternative. It's been around for about a century or more. And we have very old, very robust data that shows that nutrition matters for children, and that's why we have federal programs like school lunch, which is, as much as you want to complain about a school lunch program, it exists because, and it has for decades, because if children don't get adequate intakes during the day, there's ample data to show that their functioning drops, their cognitive ability will drop. There's also lots of newer data showing how individual nutrients relate to learning. For example, girls seem to struggle more often with math learning disabilities in particular when their iron status is poor.